Okay.
Is it late enough to say good evening?
I guess I was still saying good afternoon, but
We'll go with it. Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Morgan. I am the chair of the JNC, and we are conducting our evening interviews. And I wanted to open the questions by asking you to introduce yourself to the members of the commission and tell us why you want to be a county.
I'm happy to do that. First of all, thank you for having me today. This is a different way of conducting an interview, but I'm happy to go with it. My name is Michele Simonsen'd. I've been an assistant state attorney in Volusia County for the last 22 years. I've also been a resident of Volusia County for the last 22 years. I'm a mom of 3, and I've got 2 stepchildren. They all range in age from 19 to 24. I knew when I was in 5th grade that I wanted to be a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer for the last 29 years. I've spent that time all in public service, and I never wavered from that conviction of wanting to be an attorney. My desire to become a judge has become more recent. I've gotten back in the courtroom after an absence for a period of time because I spent a lot of time in the office meeting with victims and making filing decisions in domestic violence cases. And over the last couple of years, I've gotten back into the courtroom again. And it really made me think about some things that I'd been missing. I miss the camaraderie of interacting with other attorneys and the judges and litigants. And I realized that I wanted to be back in there. I enjoyed preparing for court. I like getting ready, and I like working with defense attorneys to come up with resolutions for cases that will result in a positive impact on people's lives moving forward. The 3 main reasons I want to be a judge are because I'm committed to public service, I enjoy working with people, and I truly want to make a difference. My dad has been a Rotarian for 49 years, and the club motto of the Rotary Club is service above self. My parents raised my brother and me with a value system that includes working hard, helping others, and treating people with kindness and respect. And those are all qualities that I would bring to the bench if I were appointed. I've been privileged to work as both a county prosecutor and an assistant federal public defender in my work as an attorney. And I appreciate the responsibilities that both of those jobs bring with them. I've learned a lot from sitting on both sides of the courtroom. And I feel that I'm comfortable managing a large caseload. I treat others with kindness and respect. And I believe that the county bench needs people who are fair, open-minded people who listen and treat people with respect. And I'm one of those people. I've been working with domestic violence victims for 21 years, and I've learned how to listen to people and to make cases move forward. I'm ready for the pace and the variety of cases that come with being a county court judge. For many years, I made filing decisions in misdemeanor domestic violence cases on the east side of Volusia County. And over the last few weeks, I've been watching county court by Zoom. I've watched several of the judges, Judge Kelly, Judge Miller, Judge Feigenbaum, and Judge Fields, to see how they're conducting court by Zoom, since this is something that we've never done before. And I've learned a lot from that, and it has solidified my desire to be a county court judge. I'm comfortable talking to people, but more importantly, I listen to people. And I understand that judges have a responsibility to follow the law and make decisions in accordance with that law. And I pledge that I would do that if I was appointed a judge. I'm excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Ms. Simonsen, this is Mark Stanton. I gather you're not scared to work all your other jobs, serving and delivering flowers. How do you find time to do all that?
I'm a good time manager. It's funny because the server job came up in 2014. My oldest daughter was working as a hostess in a restaurant in New Smyrna. And she came home one day and said, Mom, they're hiring people. You should come work with me. And I said, you're crazy. What are you thinking about? But then I started to think about the fact that she was a senior in high school and was going to be graduating in a few months, and we needed to figure out how to pay for college. And at that time, back in 2014, Bright Futures wasn't worth the same value that it is today for my other kids. So she and I worked together at the restaurant. Eventually, one of my other daughters came, my other daughter came, and my stepdaughter came, and I managed my time well. I work a full day. I've got my change of clothes in the car. I'm ready to go from one to the other with a smooth transition. And lately, I've been reserving the shifts. With COVID, I've been reserving them just to the weekend time. So there's no problem there.
Ms. Simonsen, filing a domestic violence charge is sometimes incredibly difficult because there might be just essentially two people's stories. You may or may not have any physical evidence, or if you do, sometimes it can be unclear if it's defensive or maybe both parties. And so walk me through your process and how you think about those cases and the things you evaluate. And the reason I ask this is, as a county judge, you're going to have to sit in judgment and kind of make similar decisions.
Absolutely. And that happens all the time. There are a lot of times that all you have is one party's version of events and another party's version of events. And you have to decide, is one supported by anything? Is there any evidence? Are there any broken pieces of furniture? Are there any holes in the wall? Are there anything that corroborate one side versus another side? And if not, if it comes down to a he said, she said, then it's a pretty challenging set of facts there. But I would say that I have come across a lot of those challenging cases. I have no problem talking with people and coming up with the right decision. You have to decide whether the person that's been charged is the real person that should be charged, because sometimes it doesn't come in that way. I've had cases before where the person arrested is really the victim, but they were acting in a defensive posture, and it just didn't get the right person at the right time. But I have the ability as the prosecutor to evaluate all of those facts and not charge the person if I feel that the facts do not support that person is the person who's responsible as the aggressor.
Simonson's Chris Green. During the course of your career, have you had the opportunity to mentor younger lawyers? And if so, can you talk to us about that?
In our office, we had a domestic violence unit for a period of time that had 2 misdemeanor attorneys and then 2 felony attorneys. It's been restructured recently, so there are 2 attorneys on each of the 4 county court dockets, and 4 of them handle DV cases and the other 4 handle a bunch of other cases. I love working with our younger attorneys. And that's one of the things that I would really like about being a county court judge. I love their enthusiasm, and I love to talk with them when they first come into the office about cases and how to handle cases, how to review evidence, how to read injunctions, how to evaluate cases and make smart decisions. So a lot of it is working with the ones in our office, it's a great opportunity because we have a lot of young attorneys or attorneys with little experience.
Well, I know Rotary. I'm the president of the Morning Rotary in St. Augustine. And I can definitely introduce you to the people in New Smyrna. They'd love to have somebody.
And I appreciate that. It's funny because when I first came to Florida, I had a 2-year-old. And within a year of moving here, I had another child. And then 2 years later, I had another child. So I had 3 kids under the age of 5. And as time went on, I became a divorced mom, single mom with 3 young children. And I didn't have the money to do a lot of things. So when I started getting involved in the community, I got involved in activities through the school system that my kids were involved with, because I wanted to be directly involved with their things that affected them. As time went on, I continued to be involved by I joined the board of directors for the Domestic Abuse Council in Volusia County, and I did a lot of things there. But I will say that a lot of the community service that I did was directed towards my kids. My youngest child graduated from high school last year. And so I now have 2 in college and 1 that's graduated from college. And now is the time that I have the freedom to join Rotary and join those other organizations that previously I didn't feel that I could handle with everything else that I was doing. So I'll take you up on meeting somebody in the Rotary here in New Smyrna.
It was interesting to see the additional income efforts that were there, and you've given us the reason why. Obviously, that was a good choice, as all 3 of your actual children have done extraordinarily well, 2 of whom are still at the University of Florida. So, you know, it takes a lot, and sometimes you just got to dig in and do it, and it appears
Yes.
that that's what you decided, and you did it, and successfully.
Yes, sir.
One other thing that's in there is there's a BE rating sitting around in Martindale, and it looks a little bit dated. Do you interact with them or ask them to update your status with them? Have you ever done that?
I never have. No.
You can.
And I was actually checking to see a lot of attorneys, just people that I know, to see what their rating is. And that was one thing that I worried about putting on there, was that my rating was a BV. And I did look back at one of the attorneys that I handled cases with in South Carolina. He's an assistant federal public defender when I was, and he's still there. He's been an attorney for probably 40 years, and he has a BV rating as well. And I think it's just that we have not followed up with people and asked people to evaluate us so that we could update that and get a higher rating. But that's another thing that I really want to make sure I follow up on, because I want that AV rating.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Simonsen, this is Travis Mydock. You've been at the state attorney's office about 20 years now, and it seems like you've been in just the domestic violence division. So I was kind of wondering why you haven't branched out to any of the other trial dockets or anything else, and just mostly focused on the DV cases.
And that's a very good question. I'll be honest with you. Nobody in my office, or very few people, want to take on domestic violence cases. I do a lot of training with our young attorneys and with law enforcement. And as soon as I say the words domestic violence, you kind of see a groan come over, or a rolling of the eyes, and people just don't want to be involved in them. They're very challenging cases. And while I have not branched out from that area, I have branched out from the standpoint of doing intake, and now I'm to doing intake, and I'm in the courtroom. I'm handling cases through disposition on 2 different judges' dockets. The reason I think that it's important to have somebody in that area for a lengthy amount of time is that these cases tend to not be a one-time thing. These are, they're a process. Domestic violence is a process, and these cases happen over time. People start out just fine in a relationship, but then it starts to get violent. And so what I find is that I work with a lot of victims, the same victims over and over again. And I'll see maybe the same perpetrator over and over again. And my interaction with those victims has a lot to do with the success of the case. And there have been times when they'll come to me and say it didn't happen, or I'm not prosecuting, I don't want to file charges, whatever. But they know that I'm there, and they can reach out to me, and they'll reach out to me for that next case or that next time that something happens, and we can get something out of it. So I really think it's not a negative thing. I did have a lot of opportunity to work in other types of cases before I came to the state attorney's office. But I just think a lot of this has to do with the fact that nobody else really wants to do it. And I'm passionate about taking care of people and representing people and keeping people safe. So that's why I've continued that position for so long.
What about your civil experience? Because this spot and certainly the county courts are growing in a capacity of more civil cases, landlord, tenant, small claims. How would you address those types of cases?
That's why I'm watching Zoom court with the county court civil judges, so that I could learn and see how those hearings are being handled. Many of the hearings that I saw involve self-represented people, and I am comfortable talking with people of all different kinds of backgrounds. And I've also talked to Judge Kelly about where do I get the knowledge, and he suggested the Trawick book. And so I looked at that, and he said sometimes they have them for sale by the library. So I'm planning to get a copy of the Trawick book so I can read up and be familiar. But in the meantime, I've just been watching Zoom court. I would also attend some CLEs on it, attend judges school, do everything that I could to be prepared. And that's something I'm not afraid of doing.
Ms. Simonsen, I saw prior to becoming a prosecutor, you were a federal public defender, and you actually tried some cases and got some acquittals.
Yes.
Working as a public defender, how has that impacted, your job as a domestic violence prosecutor?
That is one of the best jobs I ever had. I was so lucky and so blessed to walk into that opportunity. And I spent 5 years as an assistant federal public defender in South Carolina. I worried at times about whether or not it would be a problem for me to represent people. Would I think they were guilty or that sort of thing? But my belief was that everyone is entitled to be represented. And there were a lot of issues with guidelines that we had to deal with. So I wanted to be sure that the guidelines were applied fairly to people. But that was a wonderful job. I learned a lot. I met a lot of people. I had cases where sometimes I might not have thought that my client had the best strategy for resolving a case, but I still listened to what they had to say. And one of those resulted in an acquittal. My Donald Cheatham case was still one of those cases. That's my Perry Mason case. This guy was in prison when I represented him. I visited him at the prison. He wanted to talk about the fact that he was a convicted felon. He wanted to talk about all kinds of things that we lawyers advise our clients against. But he wanted this kind of defense presented. And so we went forward, and it was just those kind of things where one thing after another went our way. And this guy that I'm sure was going to be convicted walked out of there with a not guilty verdict. I keep that in mind because I know that these cases can go any way. You might win them, you might have the best evidence in the world, but maybe your victim's not going to come forward and testify, or something happens and it doesn't turn out the way that you want to. But what I've learned is that you need to be prepared. You need to be fully prepared and do your very best job. You need to make sure that the jury knows that you're a prepared person. You walk in there with confidence so that you can handle that case to the best of your ability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does any other commissioner have any questions? All right, so what will happen is you're our last interview, so we'll probably take a short break, reconvene to deliberate, and then you will get a phone call from us. Let's see here, your last 2 digits of your cell phone are 28. Is that a good number for us to contact you on?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Thank you for preparing so well today, and someone will be in touch shortly.
Thank you all so much. Hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.